I'm going to use the square and birail tools to give us more control over these outer edges of the surfaces. And I'll start by using the Curve Edit tool to duplicate some of the boundaries from these monorails. And this has got the advantage that it means the curves are going to be matched on opposite sides, which will give the surfaces a better flow of CVs. So I can just get rid of the monorail surfaces for now. And I'm left with an extra set of curves that will give me more control over the surface shape. So I'll start by looking at the hood surface. And I've got 4 boundaries here, so I can use the square surface to create that. And square requires that all the corners are connected, so that you can then pick around in consecutive order and create the surface. So now I've got complete control over all of the boundaries through moving the curves. But if my curves aren't connected at the corners, then the surface will go dotted, which means it can't be built. So I can just fix that by snapping the CV back again. Now whenever I create one half of a surface, I need to check the smoothness across the center line. And that's looking okay. But if I had a more extreme curve shape, for example, this is quite a common occurrence. And I can fix that by going back into the control window for square. And this boundary is number 1. And up here on continuity, I can set the number 1 boundary to having a thing called implied tangent. And we only ever use that on center lines, but it causes it to be smooth across the center line, so long as the curves are going smooth as well. So I could now create another curve here to create a 4-sided boundary. But unless I want to add in some different shape, then it's better to just be economical and do a birail with just 1 generation curve going down these 2 rails, for example. And then the 4th boundary gets created naturally. I need to put the implied tangent on here again, so this is rail 1 in this case. So it's the same for birail as it is for square. And then I'll typically do the larger, simpler surfaces first, and then the detailed surfaces second. So I'll do this lower surface, and it's got the implied tangent on already, so that's looking good. And then I'll come to this final blending surface. And should I use square or birail? Well, because the hood surface was mostly squarish in shape, then that's why I chose square there. But this surface is long and thin, so I typically choose a 2-generation curve birail. And I'll always try to have the shorter curves as the generation curves, and the longer ones as the rails, as that'll typically give me a better surface. And I don't want implied tangent there, so I'll put that back to position, and then just put the implied tangent on to generation 1. And that's looking okay. Now there's not much point in having created all those extra curves unless they're going to help me to get a better design. So I can start to tidy those up. And I'll just put that corner CV back to where it was before by doing a vertical point snap. But I still don't really know how far in or out that should be. So one approach I can take is to use a construction plane on this edge. And I'll just create a world plane and point snap it to the bottom of the A-pillar here. And to start with, I don't really know what angle I want it at, so I'll just do a rough guess to start with. But what you can do with construction planes is you can intersect them with surfaces. So if I now take my front set of surfaces, I can intersect them with that construction plane, and that then shows me what I'm working with. And of course I've got construction history, so I can just go back to the plane and start to rotate it perhaps, and work out where I want my line to be. So it might be that I want it in sympathy with this wheel arch. And there's a couple of ways I can work with this line. I've got the plane selected, so here on the construction palette I can set it as the construction plane. And then if I hit F9 I can go into the 4 windows and find the right view. And then I can just pick the CVs and do a constrain move to flatten them into the construction plane. And then I can just hit F8 to get back into the perspective view. And there's another interesting behaviour with construction planes, and I'll just isolate these three curves to show it to you more clearly. If I pick the NCV on this curve and also on this curve, and then do a move and curve snap to this line, then you notice this little green cross, and I can snap to that. And that's where the line intersects with the construction plane. And you only see that cross when the construction plane is set. But that means that that point is now in line in the construction plane. So then I can just finish off all the other CVs and again do a constrain move to snap them into the plane. And because I've got construction history, then all the surfaces have been rebuilt. So now I've got this strong line down the side of my front surfaces. Now using the construction plane is optional, and you could probably have got quite a good result just doing it by eye, certainly if you're just concept modelling like we are. But it's a useful tool if you want to introduce some discipline into the shapes on your car. So don't forget to toggle out of the construction plane when you've finished using it. So there's a lot more sophistication with the square and bi-rail tools, as they can create continuity relationships on the boundaries. And this is covered in the final section in the fundamentals tutorials.